Oh hey guys, how you doing? This is False Bulls 123, and you know what? I'm pretty sure this is day 78 of our quarantine daily vlog. And you're like, okay Ryan, obviously you knew that the camera was right there. You're like a YouTuber or whatever. Like, why are you holding Momma Boone so lovingly and caringly today? And that is because today, mostly it's because I didn't have too many great stellar ideas. I felt like talking about all of the stuffed animals I've owned in my entire life for no apparent reason. You know, for content! And so, pretty much, I felt like, on my daily quarantine vlogs, I've been having other story times. I told you about when I was born, which was weird. I told you about when I had appendicitis. And I've also told you things that don't involve my medical history. I'm trying to think of one of those, but, technically, no. All of my stories have involved my medical history in some fashion. So, let's finally talk about something that doesn't involve my blood and guts spilling on the sawdust floor. Just for you, fam. And so, I'm trying to think way back when, because, growing up, I've had a few stuffed animals. And I know nowadays, we don't always phrase them in that sense. I've heard people use the term plushies and stuffies before. I know my parents use the term stuffies, which is really interesting actually. Mostly just because as a kid, I was always under the bias that stuffed animals were much more preferred by children and that they were considered immature by adults. But growing up in, the 2000s, I have discovered either this bias has flipped or changed, or just that it wasn't as accurate of a bias as I was familiar with. Of course, as Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, but when I grew up, I gave away my childish things, because for some reason I want to quote, the New Testament for no reason. But it's I know that, a lot of adults in my family, just abroad, still have stuffed animals that, even if they don't have a strong emotional attachment as a security object, they still enjoy owning, which I thought was really fascinating. Of course, you can also think of this historically as, 90s people's obsession with Beanie Babies, or just the renaissance of the Furby community, once again loving those absolutely horrifying, things. That being said, most original 1980s Furbies that have the animatronics in them are very rare to find, so most people who do modify Furbies these days are using the 1990s Furby Buddies, which were simply stuffed animals that didn't have horrifying blinking eyes. Come play with us. Furbies are fucking terrifying. But also, Boy Poor are just super cute, and I kind of want one. But I'm not going to make myself one, because I ain't got time for that. I'm too busy telling you about other bullshit. So, I've noticed that, my parents, they own stuffed animals. My mother has quite a few. And she loves them to bits. She has one called Providence, which she named after the hospital she was staying in, which go off. And then she has, a few other ones which she likes them, they're cute. And I'm just we need more cute things in our life. We need to enjoy the simple pleasures of just life, embrace your inner child. Which, I guess also the concept of having a childhood sense of wonder, or the inner child concept in pop psychology, might actually be a sort of sociological, viewpoint in how we still enjoy things that are considered childish, like video games or stuffed animals. Because we allow ourselves to enjoy things that we have seen as childish with a new maturity. That's actually an interesting point if you guys want to think about that. But let's actually get on to not talking about the sociological ramifications of stuffed animals, and actually get on to talking about my cutesy soft things. Also, I'm just going to be cuddling this animal this entire time. This is Pikachu, hi. So, I think the first stuffed animal I ever had was, it was this little Beanie Baby style thing, and it was this little rabbit, right? Real tiny. And pretty sure I called him Mr. Bunny, or Mr. Rabbit, I can't remember. And my aunt gave him to me when I was born, and I loved the fuck out of that thing. I was just you are my favorite thing. I fucking love you. And I don't really remember what happened about it. I think around the time I was 6, it just got so worn out that my, family, I guess, disposed of it. I don't know. Maybe it's in a box somewhere, in the attic. Who knows? Not that I've ever actually seen the attic, because it's hard to get in place, and we're not sure the beams are actually safe or anything. So nobody goes up there. And so that was pretty much my first stuffed animal. I don't have any pictures. I'm sure if I ask my mother, she probably has like 500 pictures of like everything I ever did, because parents like to take baby pictures a lot, and I never understood that, but like go off. I take like 100 selfies of myself every year, so it's like whatever. And I'm trying to actually think of what we were talking about. Oh yeah, stuffed animals. So I think around the time I was 6 or 7, I had a growing collection of stuffed animals at that point because, I was a young kid and people like to give kids stuffies. And so I don't remember too many about the ones that I owned. I remember I had a stuffed owl that I got from a neighbor and it smelled a little bit like cigarette smoke because she was a smoker. But no, it wasn't an owl, it was a seal. I remember that now. It was a stuffed seal. That was cute. But the smoke was weird. And I had a few other stuffed animals that I don't really remember. Now, I think the next stuffed animal I got, that was Pikachu, right? Which, by the way, I should mention, Pikachu doesn't have like that little spot on the tip of the tail. It's at the base. And that's like one of those Mandela effects that, I always think of Pikachu and I think oh, it's right on the tail. And I'm just like, it's not. And I've owned this stuffed animal since I was 8. But you're like, Ryan, how did you get Pikachu? And so, pretty much, way back then, when I was a kid, my parents were really concerned about, family unity, about family cohesion. And so they always kind of included me in partially for their, anniversary days. And so, in the mornings, we would go as a family, and we would have, dinner at, Hometown Buffet, back when it was good. And, we would just have a really lovely time. And then in the afternoons, my parents would, drop me off at my grandma's house, and they would go have, dinner together to, celebrate their anniversary. And they're doing really good. They're, I think 15 years now or something. It is so crazy. I'm so happy that, their marriage is just so strong, because not everyone has that. But, on their 8th anniversary, or no, when I was 8, I think it might have been their 5th anniversary. Yeah, that's about the math. They got me, this Pikachu, because I was obsessed with Pokemon. I fucking loved it. I got Pokemon Sapphire for Christmas on, my DS, which I also got. It was, so cool to have that. And, I loved Pokemon. I was watching the show all the time, and let's be honest, original Pokemon, that was bitching. But, that Sun and Moon show with, they retcon everything, that sucks. I do not like Sun and Moon. I thought it was an awful TV show. They literally have a character who's a Pokédex, and instead of the Pokédex character actually telling you things, also, the Pokédex is a Pokemon somehow? How does that work? He doesn't get to actually talk half the time. He just goes, gee whiz, Ash Senpai, tell me more about these Pokemons, because that's not my fucking job, It's like, Ash, shut the fuck up. You have a character who's a literal talking encyclopedia, and you never let him tell you about the Pokemon. When you were 10, 50 years ago, like you are now, you let your Pokédex tell you about that legendary Pokemon that you never saw again after you crashed Misty's bike and became this huge running gag. But now you can't let this bitch talk. And I'm just like, okay fam, go off. Now that I have been very vitriolic about my dislike of Sun and Moon, basically I got this when I was 8. And my parents said, hey, we got something for you. And so I got in the car. It was a brown station wagon. And they're like, we got you this gift. And they gave me Pikachu. Also, it was much more plump and not as, scraggly because, like I said before, let's do some quick mental math. This is 14 years old. So, looking pretty good for, a stuffed animal, And, I'm not even sure the last time I've washed them because, I feel like stuffed animals, they can have, defined genders. But I don't think I ever really settled on a specific gender for Pikachu. Most of my other stuffed animals were masculine or feminine, but yeah, I really feel like Pikachu is just in general agendered. Also, does anyone know if the Pikachu from Pokemon, Ash's Pikachu, if it's a boy or a girl? Because I'm just kind of wondering. I had the same question about a lot of Muppets, Elmo. Because I always assumed that Elmo was a chick. But like some people say that Elmo's a guy, and I'm just like, does it matter? Like maybe they're non-binary, like who knows, you know? But I don't know. It's like I just wonder if they like have a defined gender because people are weird like that. And so that was basically this was definitely one of my favorite stuffed animals I've ever had. It also feels weird, sort of like objectifying in that sense that like it's a stuffed animal that I enjoy. Mostly just because I don't really think of them except for the emotional attachment I have, which is interesting. You know, a lot of humans, like, you know, it's very natural for us to create emotional bonds with objects, especially in a sense when we personify them. And so I think it's interesting that for stuffed animals, we have these sentimental, emotional bonds that we use as the sort of personified identity more than we actually have them as an objectified object. So that's actually a really interesting thing to think about. But let's actually move on. Pretty much, one by one, like, you know, I lost most of my stuffed animals. I also remember for a fat second that I was really into Webkinz, and I owned, I think, 3 Webkinz, right? I may have owned more. I owned a black lab, which I named Pounder after the only dog I owned in my childhood. I owned, let's see, another dog, I think. And Webkinz is, honestly, as toy, like, you know, gimmicks go, it's actually pretty good. Do you guys know about Webkinz? You might be, like, you know, too young for that. Pretty much, Webkinz were the stuffed animals you get, and they were real cutesy. And they were, like, you know, just like pets or animals or whatever. And basically, each Webkinz you got a little code for. And so, you would pretty much go onto the Webkinz site, you would type in the code, and you would get a virtual pet to play with, along with your actual stuffed animal. And so every year, like, you know, I think there was like a limit. You had to, like, you know, occasionally like grow your Webkinz to like keep your membership or something. I don't quite remember. But pretty much like you get another stuffy, you would add it in, and like, you know, you get more perks, and you could, like, you know, level up your virtual pet and stuff. And it was actually a lot of fun. Like, as all those like virtual pet games online are, because that is an entire interesting phenomenon and niche, Webkinz was just, it was really well made. One of my favorite things was there was these trivia. They're basically set up for, like, you know, kids, but like you could get them all the way, but like they had content all the way like up to, like, you know, preteens. And one of my favorite things to do on the Webkinz site, besides like playing the 1 minute, besides playing this like mini game where like you had to flip pancakes, and I was like perfect at it, and I always got like 100% because like I was a bad bitch, was they had this trivia game center that like every day they had, like, you know, a trivia quiz that you could take. And I was really good at that because I'm very well read. Like, you know, I have a pretty good memory when it comes to, like, you know, minutia. And so I actually fairly good at trivia. And so I really enjoyed it because, you know, I'm an inquisitive, well-read person, and I'm just like, well, duh, I know, like, you know, the rivers of the world or whatever. And it's like, so you would just play them along, and you could actually like play all the backlogs because every month they would have a daily quiz, and then it would like show a tiny piece of this puzzle, and so you could like basically make like, you could like basically play this entire month and get this like calendar page, which was like super, which was like just some random artwork, but it was like, it was fun to like reveal it, you know. And so I had so much fun. I used to play that game for hours and hours, and just, well, it was really engaging now that I'm thinking about it. Also, a little side story. I think it was my mom's, or like on my mom's account, but I also got this little kid, which was like a miniature version of a Webkinz, right? And it was a little pink poodle, and it's tiny. Like it's around this house somewhere, and it is tiny. Maybe it's in my mom's place, actually. Who knows? And we had this cat, and we still have it, Gizzy. You've seen her on my channel if you're watching this in chronological order. And so Gizzy used to be a Bombay, and she was actually the runt. So she was very, very small when she was a kitten. And so she used to literally be the same size as one of those little kittens because she used to play with like the pink poodle, and it was like her favorite toy. Which, kind of weird, but like, you know, it's just like something that happens. And we found it like years later after she got, like, you know, big, because that's what happens with cats. And the size difference is so crazy because she used to literally be the same size as this little stuffed animal, and now she's a fat chunker. Like, well, she's like a chunk. She's not a fat chunk, you know? Like, she ain't that big. That'd be my aunt's cousin, Tiger. He's a pretty big boy. But pretty much, like, you know, that was my stint with Webkinz, which were fun. Webkinz were like the 2000s version of Beanie Babies, but, like, nobody had a riot over, like, you know, Webkinz. Like, Franz Ferdinand wasn't... Was it Franz Ferdinand Kaiser Chiefs was saying, like, no, I predict a riot? It was Kaiser Chiefs. Like, that wasn't happening. Like, you know, nobody was having Christopher T. It was just people like Webkinz, and then they just, like, kind of whatevs. Like, a lot of, like, you know, I guess toy manufacturer trends happen. Because, like, you know, Bakugan used to be the biggest thing, which I have so much merch that, like, you know, I need to do something with. And, like, now it's all about Beyblades, which I have not heard of and don't care about. It's like Tops? That sounds boring. Anyway, so pretty much, like, you know, one by one, I gave away, or I lost, or, like, you know, I left somewhere. Like, you know, all my stuffed animals, like you does. And pretty much Pikachu was the only stuffed animal that I have left from sort of, like, that period in my life. I'm pretty sure that I brought Pikachu with me to college, mostly just not because I necessarily needed a comfort object with me, but because I like the familiarity of having it. It's something personal. It's something that's, like, you know, intimate. And so it's like I liked having just, like, you know, that type of thing. I also, like, you know, when it comes to beds, I ain't gonna throw pillows on my bed because honestly, I just like, you know, when you're looking at a bed and it's covered in like 50,000 throw pillows, like Kate's bed in the first season of NCIS, because, you know, I always gotta have those obscure entertainment references. Though I do love that scene. And it's just like, how you supposed to sleep on this bed? It got too many throw pillows. It's like that Nathan Pyle comic that I'm not going to put here, because that would be copyright infringement. But, like, maybe I'll put a link to it down below in the description or something. And it's just, that's passe. But you know what's not passe? Like stuffed animals. Like, you look on a bed, it got a cute little kitty cat, but it's a stuffy. And you're like, that's adorable. I want to lay on your bed now and hug that cat. And I'm just like, that's how you do it, bitch. Like, that's adorable. Everyone likes plushies, and everyone likes plushies on duvets. Also, I dislike people who use the phrase duvet. But that is beside the point. And so I pretty much brought Pikachu to, like, you know, college with me. It stayed on my bed for, like, the longest period of time. And I didn't used to make... It was weird. So, like, I don't make my bed a lot. I used to, like, you know, when I was a kid, all the time, and, like, you know, I had time in the morning. Well, no, I didn't. But, like, you know, pretty much the only period of time where I, like, consistently made my bed, and I didn't just, like, throw my, like, blankets back on my bed and, like, rush out the door, because my life has been a series of early morning, like, you know, early morning, like, you know, stuff. Like, I've never really had a job where you get to go in at 9, or you get to go in, like, you know, later in the day to start. I've usually always had the morning shift, because I'm the type of person where it's just like, bitch, I don't care, like, I don't care when you need me, I just want this job, and nobody wants to work morning shifts, so I always work morning shifts, so I ain't getting up at, like, you know, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning and making my fucking bed, when I can, like, sleep 15 more minutes in, and, like, you know, take a shower, you know? Ain't nobody got time for that. But pretty much the only time I consistently made my bed when I was in Coos Bay, when I, like, first started my channel, because I worked, like, you know, mid-afternoon, because that's when they needed me. And so, you know, I had time in the morning to, like, you know, make my bed, to just enjoy my mornings, which was nice, and, like, get shit done. And that was nice. But, pretty much, let's talk about how I found Momma Boone, because that's going to be, and I'm just checking, sorry about that. No, that didn't work. So I'm just, like, checking the time because I have someplace to be in a second. And I'm going to tell you about how I found Momma Boone, which I actually didn't technically find her. So it was my... sorry, my mom just texted. Anyway. So it was, let's see, first quarter, about halfway through. This was after I won the television, but I think a little bit before, we reorganized it to connect it with Tristan's SNES Classic. No, it was the NES Classic. It wasn't the SNES Classic. Which was so cool. Like, honestly, like, Nintendo, why aren't you, like, remaking NES Classics? They were so fucking awesome. Like, You should just have those, like, legacy forever, because people would just buy that shit up. Like, they're amazing. Ooh, I also just remembered one time, but I'll have to tell you this story later. The one time I was really, really fucking high, and I actually came up with a really great way of just solving the problem of, like, video game destruction and how we can actually have a complete, like, archival of it. But I'll discuss that in some other day. Anyway, really great description. Guys, I was... Anyway, so pretty much around that time, I think I've mentioned this before on the channel, but, like, whatever. Me and Chris, like, used to dumpster dive a lot. And so, I would do some dumpster diving, he would do some dumpster diving, and I would actually, like, help him, like, carry some of the stuff back, which I didn't mind. And one time he found this huge, like, stuffed bear, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, that's, like, super cute. Like, and I, like, love the concept of giant stuffed teddy bears, just because it's such an iconic, like, thing. Like, they're so cuddly. And so it's just like, fine, well, like, you found it, like, I want to name them. And she's like, fine, what the fuck ever. And I'm just like, cool, because, like, I wanted to name her. And so, like, and we just and so, like, he says, like, well, obviously, like, this bear's a shit. And I'm just like, okay, like, how about Momma Boone? Because, like, it's Germanic. Well, I actually believe the Boone is Welsh or Dutch or something. I don't know, but if you are familiar with, like, these things, let us know. But basically, if you don't know, Brune is the name of this bear character from a lot of the Renard myth cycle. Basically, these German folklore characters with, like, human, like, with these fabled, like, animals. And so Brune was a brown bear, actually. But since I, like, like the folksy name, and since both me and Chris had, like, German ancestry, we thought it would be, like, a cutesy little nod. Like, hey, them roots. And so, like, I decided Momma Boone. Because, like, it's motherly, it's loving. And, like, honestly, like, look at this face and telling me this is not the face of a mama bear. You can't do it. Like, look at this face, child. And so, that's what we, like, decided on. I also used to dress her up in, like, a lot of my, like, knit caps. And, like, we had found the soccer ball, and so she would hold it just to, like, keep herself upright because she has a habit of, like, falling over. And I pretty much, like, carried her to my apartment where, like, well, it wasn't my apartment, but, like, to the apartment, like, where I first started my channel. I shipped her back home in this huge fucking, like, box. Like, it was gigantic. Like, oh my. Hi guys, like, hope you enjoyed the ride. It was like it was a big box. And so, like, she, like, came to, like, back home before I did. But, like, I'm glad I brought her with me. She means a lot to me emotionally. Like, she reminds me of a lot of the good times in college. And I'm glad to have her with me. So it's like, I'm glad that the stuffed animals I do have this emotional connection, that I had these things that remind me, like, of a lot of my family, because, like, because it reminds me a lot of just, like, my parents, and, like, this really early time in my childhood where I was really content and really happy, and I didn't have all these stressors. And Momma Boone just reminds me of, like, all the fun I've had in college, and about, like, my best friend and shit. And so it's like, I'm glad that I have these emotional connections that can be expressed through, like, these very few objects. And, I'm not gonna get too maudlin, but down below, tell me what you thought about this video. Like, was it a little weird? I get it, it's a little weird, but, like, did you have fun? And tell me about your stuffed animals. Do you have, like, any stuffed animals that you absolutely love? Do you have any stuffed animals that you absolutely hate? Like, do you remember Webkinz? Or Beanie Babies? Or, like, any of this shit? Like, I want to hear from you. Like, tell me down below. I don't, like, get enough comments from you guys, and I'm not saying that you have to comment if you want to watch my content, but I want to have a conversation with you, and, like, I want to get to know the people that actually take the time to click on this video, to hear what I have to say, to laugh at my dumb face as I try to, like, crack unfunny jokes. And yeah, as always, you can always like and subscribe as well. I'll let you do it, don't worry. And feel free to share this with your friends. If you just have a friend out there who wants to hear some random guy from Medford, Oregon talk about, like, plushies for half an hour. Anyway, guys, that's really all I have to say today. Remember what I always tell you. Wash your hands, Tell your loved ones that you love them. Stay safe, and all that. And this is False Post 123, and I'm signing off.